What do you call a potato with 4 right angles? A square root. Alright, boys, girls, welcome to video lesson 3-3, our lesson on completing the square. Okay, we're on method 3 of solving quadratics, our learning targets. Whoa, I need my pointer. I can solve quadratic equations by completing the square, and we're also going to be using the completing the square method to rewrite a standard form of a quadratic equation in a vertex form. So we are on method 4 of solving quadratic equations. Remember, quadratic equations have that x squared. We're finding the answers for x. Our fourth method is completing the square. Okay, these are our steps to completing the square. There are 6 steps. We divide every term by a, move the c term to the other side, look at the b term, divide it by 2. Let's hope that b is even. If it's not, then we're going to have fractions. We're going to square that number that we get when we divide the b over 2, and we're going to add it to both sides. We're then going to take the square root of each side. Don't forget your positive or negative, your plus or minus. And then lastly, if necessary, solve for x. Okay, this quadratic equation right here is actually factorable. So I want you guys to stop the tape right now. Stop the tape and go ahead and factor this and come up with 2 answers for x. And I shall be right back. Okay, you should have found that x is 10 or x is neg 2. Okay, we factor. Here's my factors. My factors, x minus 10, x plus 2. We set each of those factors to 0. X minus 10 equals 0. Or x plus 2 equals 0. When I solve for x, I get x is 10. Or x is neg 2. So there are my answers, 10 and neg 2. So this is the exact same problem right now. I already know my answers are x equals 10 or x equals neg 2. But let's solve this by completing the square. The first step is done for us. Notice that the a is 1, so I don't need to divide by anything right now. So the first step is done. I already have a 1 in front of the x squared. My next step is to move my c term to the other side, so I'm simply going to add 20 to both sides. So now I have x squared minus 8x, and then I'm going to write in a blank. Equals 0 plus 20 is 20. And if I add a blank to one side, I need to add that blank to the other side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our b term, which is negative 8. Our b is negative 8. I'm going to take that negative 8 and divide by 2, which of course is negatory 4. I'm going to take that negative 4 and square it. Negative 4 squared is 16, and I'm going to add that to both sides. When I've done that, on the left side, what I've created is a perfect trinomial square. That's why we call this method completing the square. I've created a binomial squared, or a perfect trinomial square. This x squared minus 8x plus 16 in factored form is going to be x minus 4 squared, and that's equal to now 20 plus 16, which is 36. Of course, I can write and talk at the same time. Now my next step is to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to do that by taking the square root of both sides. When you take the square root, don't forget our plus or minus. Okay, the square root of x minus 4 squared, of course, is, and let me change colors here, we'll go black, x minus 4. The square root of x minus 4 squared is x minus 4, and that's equal to plus or minus the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6. So x minus 4 is equal to 6, or x minus 4 is equal to neg 6. Once I've done that, I just simply now solve for x on both sides. Add 4, x equals 10, which we had, or add 4, x equals negative 2, and that also is the same answer we had up there. Okay, you guys go ahead and factor this next one, see what you get for x. I'll be right back. Okay, you should have found that x equals 4 or x equals 2. If you still need help with solving by factoring, make sure you come and see me. This is a pretty simple one. So x is 4 or x is 2. If you need help, come and see me. Let's solve this now by completing the square. Okay, we already know our answers are x is 4 or x is 2. But let's go through the method for completing the square. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to divide each term by a. Again, in this case, my a is 1, so I don't need to do that term. That's nice, or that step. My next step, step 2, is to move the c term to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So now I have x squared minus 6x plus blank equals negative 8. 0 minus 8 plus my blank. If I add something to one side, I got to add it to the other as well. Let's now complete our square. So we're going to take our b term, which is negative 6, or we're going to take our b, negative 6, divided by 2, of course, is neg 3. Neg 3, I'm going to square that puppy, which is 9, and add it in my blanks to both sides. So now I have x squared minus 6x plus 9. I'm hoping you recognize that as x minus 3 squared. And that's equal to neg 8 plus 9, which of course is 1. I'm now going to do the step where I take the square root of both sides. Whoop, whoop. Don't forget the plus or minus. So now the square root of x minus 3 squared, of course, is x minus 3. And that is equal to square root of 1 is 1, or x minus 3 is equal to the square root of 1, which is also negative 1. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. I get x equals quattro. Hey, 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 that's what we had up here. Or add 3 to both sides. X equals dos. That's what we had up here. Yep, you guys try ahead. Go ahead and factor that one. Factor that one. Okay, you should have gotten x equals neg 6 or x equals 3. If you need help with factoring, come and see me. Okay, let's solve this by completing the square. This is going to be a little bit harder because our b term now is an odd number. Okay, but I'm still nice to you in the beginning because our a is 1. So when we divide everything by 1, nothing changes. Hey, 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 that's nice. I'm going to do step 2, which is move the c term, the 18, to the other side. So I'm going to have x squared plus 3x plus blank is equal to positive 18 plus blank. Now I'm going to take my 3, divide it by 2, and I'm going to square it. Don't get out your calculators. Don't knock it out your calculators. Don't write this as a decimal. Just square 3 halves. 3 halves squared is 3 times 3, which is 9, over 2 times 2, which is 4. So 9/4, I'm going to add 9/4 to both sides. On the left-hand side here, and again, this is not an easy factor, but you just completed the square. So, with practice, you're going to see that this is x plus 3 halves squared. And now the 18, I need to add 9/4, so we're going to get a common denominator. 18 is also 72 over 4. I multiply both top and bottom by 4. So 72 fourths plus 9 fourths is 81 fourths. I'm going to do my, I think it's the 4th or 5th step. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. Square root of x plus 3 halves squared is x plus 3 halves. And that's equal to the square root of 81 fourths, which is plus or minus 9 halves. So I'm going to subtract 3 halves from both sides. So x plus 3 halves is equal to 9 halves, or x plus 3 halves is equal to negative 9 halves. Okay, I'm going to subtract the 3 halves. 9 halves minus 3 halves is 6 halves. So 6 halves equals 3, which was one of our answers. Or minus 3 halves minus 3 halves. Negative 9 halves minus 3 halves is negative 12 halves, which of course equals negative 6. And once again, here are our two answers, 3 and negative 6. Okay, this guy right here, x squared minus 8x plus 11 is equal to 0. This is not factorable. It's not factorable, so you must solve this equation by completing the square. Once again, our a is 1, so we don't need to do the first step. I'm going to subtract the 11 from both sides. minus 11, x squared minus 8x plus blank equals negative 11 plus blank. Go ahead, you guys figure out what I need to add in that blank, and I'll be right back. Very good. You should have found that we take the negative 8 divided by 2, we get negative 4. Take that negative 4 and square it. I add 16 to both my left and right sides of my equation. So now I have x squared minus 8x plus 16, which is x minus 4 squared. And that equals negative 11 plus 16 is 5. I'm simply now going to take the square root of both sides. We've been doing this all along. Whoop, whoop. Don't forget the plus or minus. Square root of x minus 4 squared is x minus 4. And that's equal to plus or minus the square root of 5. And now simply I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So my final answer is going to be now x equals negative the square root of 5 plus 4, or positive the square root of 5 plus 4. And there are my two answers. Okay, next we are going to convert from vertex form to standard form. To do that, and again, general form is also called standard form, we're just going to FOIL and simplify. Okay, we'll do one in a second. And to convert from standard form to vertex form, we need to complete the square. Complete the square. Okay, write the following equation in standard form. So this, of course, is in vertex form. Our vertex is at -3 comma -5, and we know that. But if I want to write this in standard form, the ax squared plus bx plus c form, I'm just going to FOIL and simplify. So what I mean by that is I'm going to take this and write 2. Whoop, I need my marker. Whoop, we'll do it in purple. 2 times x plus 3 times x plus 3 minus 5. Let's just look at this part right here. X plus 3 times x plus 3. I'm going to FOIL that out, so I get 2 times x squared plus 6x plus 9. When I FOIL that and simplify, I get x squared plus 6x plus 9 minus 5. So this now becomes 2x squared. I'm just distributing my 2 plus 12x plus 18 minus 5. So my final answer, written in blue, is going to be 2x squared plus 12x plus 18 minus 5 is plus 13 equals y. Okay, now we're going to do this guy. This is in standard form. This is in standard form, the ax squared plus bx plus c form, and we're going to write this in vertex form, and I'm going to do that by completing the square. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my terms around a little bit, so I have y equals x squared plus 8x, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a blank, move my negative 2 over just a little bit, and then if I add a blank, I'm also going to subtract a blank on the same side of my equal sign, because if I add something, I can't just change the equation, but if I add it and then also subtract it, nothing happens. So let's complete our square now. Let's look at our b term, which is 8. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared, of course, is equal to 16, so I'm going to add 16 to my blank twice. I add the 16 and I also subtract the 16. That way I'm just adding 0. So now I have y equals x squared plus 8x plus 16, of course, is x plus 4 squared. Minus 2 minus 16 is minus 18. And now I have my equation written in vertex form. Alright, you guys try this one on your own. We're written in general form or in standard form right now. Put this in vertex form, the a times x minus h squared plus k form. Complete the square, and I shall be right back. Okay, you should have y equals x plus 6 squared minus 39. What I did here is I just took my original equation, x squared plus 12x. I moved the negative 3 over a little bit, and I added a blank, and I subtracted the blank. If I add it, I need to subtract it. Can't just add things. Okay. Now I took my b term, which was 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. That's what I added to both of my blanks. So now I have this x squared plus 12x plus 6, I hope you recognize, is x plus 6 squared plus 36. Oh, I'm sorry, minus 3 minus 36 is negative 39. So there's my equation in a vertex form. Okay, let's do this last one together. It's going to be a little more difficult because again we have an odd number for our b term, so we know we're going to have to deal with some fractions, but that's okay. Let's go. I'm going to write y equals x squared minus 9x. Put in my blank. I still have my plus 3, and then I'm going to subtract my blank as well. Well, half of 9, of course, is 9 halves. I'm going to take that and square it. 9 halves times 9 halves is 81 fourths. So I put that in my blank. Now, this would not be something I'd want you to factor, but we just completed the square, so I'm hoping you recognize that this is going to be y equals x minus 9 halves squared plus 3 minus 81 fourths. Well, 3 is 12 fourths. 12 fourths minus 81 fourths, don't tell me, negatory 69 over 4. And here's my equation in a vertex form. That's it, folks. That's a long one, but we shall see you soon.